Long before pyramids pierced the sky, before pharaohs carved their names into eternity, Egypt was still becoming itself. The land along the Nile was alive with possibility, shaped by floodwaters, belief, and ambition. In this forgotten age, power did not yet wear crowns of gold. It was raw, experimental, and deeply human. And at the center of this transformation stood a ruler history nearly erased. A king known only as Den. The Nile was Egypt's lifeline. Each year, it rose and fell like a heartbeat, deciding who would thrive and who would vanish. For early Egyptians, this river was not merely water. It was divine order made visible. Survival depended on understanding its rhythms, and control over that knowledge meant power. As villages grew into cities, leadership became more than strength. It became organization, ritual, and authority. By the late 4th millennium BCE, Egypt was no longer a loose collection of settlements. It was unifying Upper and Lower Egypt. Once rivals were being drawn together under a single vision. The crown was new. The idea of kingship was fragile. One wrong ruler could fracture everything. It was into this volatile moment that Den was born. Den came to the throne as a child, a dangerous reality in an age where power was never secure. Regents ruled in his name, likely his mother, Queen Meretnith, one of the earliest women in history to wield true political authority. While Den was growing, Egypt itself was being shaped. Laws were forming. Borders were defined. The state was learning how to exist. When Den finally ruled alone, something changed. His reign marked a turning point. For the first time, the king was not just a war leader or religious figure. He became the embodiment of the state itself. Den's name was written inside a serif, topped with the Horus Falcon, a declaration that the king was divine order on earth. Artifacts from Den's reign reveal a ruler obsessed with structure. Ivory labels record taxation, festivals, and military campaigns. These were not decorations. They were administration. Egypt was becoming bureaucratic, measurable, controlled. Power was no longer improvised. It was documented. Den may have been the first Egyptian king depicted wearing the double crown, symbolizing the complete union of Upper and Lower Egypt. This image was more than symbolism. It was propaganda, a visual message to every subject along the Nile that division was over. There was one land, one ruler, one cosmic order, yet unity was never peaceful. Evidence suggests Den led military campaigns to secure borders and suppress rebellion. Carvings show him striking enemies, frozen forever in stone. This was not brutality for its own sake. It was a warning. The stability of Egypt depended on fear as much as faith. Religion, under Den, evolved into something permanent. The king was no longer just favored by the gods. He was essential to their balance. Rituals tied his health to the health of the land. If the king failed, chaos would follow. This belief bound the population to the throne in ways no army ever could. Den's tomb at Abydos reveals the scale of his power. Unlike earlier burials, it was complex, engineered, deliberate. Surrounding it were subsidiary graves, likely sacrificed retainers meant to serve him in the afterlife. To modern eyes, this is horrifying. To ancient Egyptians, it was devotion. Death itself was organized around the king. Under Den, writing advanced rapidly. Hieroglyphs became more standardized, more precise. Time itself began to be recorded. Years were named after events, creating one of the earliest known historical records. Egypt was learning to remember itself. Trade expanded far beyond the Nile. Goods flowed in from the Sinai, Nubia, and the Levant. Egypt was no longer isolated. It was a rising power interacting with the wider ancient world. Den's reign helped transform Egypt from a regional culture into a civilization with global reach. What makes Den extraordinary is not conquest alone, but continuity. The systems he strengthened would endure for thousands of years. Later pharaohs would rule using frameworks established during his lifetime. Titles, rituals, art styles, and governance all trace their roots back to this era. And yet, Den himself faded from popular memory. His monuments were overshadowed by later dynasties, his name buried beneath the weight of pyramids and legends. But without Den, there may have been no old kingdom, no Khufu, no Giza. Den ruled for decades, an eternity in ancient times. When he died, Egypt did not collapse. It continued. That may be his greatest achievement. He proved that the state could survive the death of a king. That order could outlive the man who embodied it. The world Den helped build would go on to inspire Udo, fear, and fascination for millennia. A civilization obsessed with eternity, balance, and power. And it all traces back to this moment, when a child king inherited chaos and left behind order. Today, fragments of Den's reign sit in museums. Small, silent, easily overlooked. But together, they tell the story of when humanity learned how to govern itself at scale. When belief and administration fused, when Egypt truly began. The story of Dan is not just ancient history. It is the origin story of civilization itself. A reminder that behind every empire lies a fragile beginning, shaped by choices made in moments when the future was anything but certain. And as the Nile still flows through Egypt today, it carries with it the echoes of a king who ruled before pyramids, before legend, and before history knew how to remember him.